And with that, we will get started. So I will ask our lovely panelists to introduce themselves, their business, and your role within your business. So we'll start with Jeremy. Get as close to that guy as possible.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you very much for inviting me today. It's a pleasure to be here and speak to you all. My name is Jeremy Koenig. I am co-owner of I Promise Performance. And do you want a lot of detail? How much do I have here?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. So we, I suppose what we advertise our business to be is one that is focused on proactive health. And the way we achieve that actually is, through, I suppose, a guiding principle that was founded by myself and my partner, Karen Furno, who some of you may have seen speak already and know that she is one of Nova Scotia's own Olympians and world champions. And so we have established this, foundation or philosophy of, comprehensive programming and implementation of essentially resources that create a health outcome. And they're designed as a result of working ourselves on athletic performance, but also doing consultation with a variety of athletes in particular, so professional hockey players, amateur sport enthusiasts as well, and really kind of using that I suppose, individual approach and meticulousness in attention to, what the athlete's needs are for a particular outcome. And so we now just kind of transpose the client from, athlete-centric to corporate-centric, where the outcome now is one that I'm sure is important. You'll agree that is important to not just businesses, but, health in general in Canada, in fact, the world. So what we have done is built a business case for facilitating health outcomes in the workplace. And we do that by pairing our corporate clients with our professional clients, so it's reinforced, right, and it becomes fun. We do it in a way where I think is forward-thinking. It becomes fun. You don't even think about what you're doing, and all of a sudden the culture is improved and gets healthier. And not only that, we pair corporations with youth focus groups. So we have important affiliates like Doctors Nova Scotia, for example, that will identify for us groups of youth that would benefit from having a proactive health initiative. And so corporations get that community outreach, and they also see an improvement in employee health, employee retention, and ultimately from an entrepreneur or CEO's perspective, they see an improvement on their bottom line. So that in a mouthful is what we do. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Jeremy. And Lorraine?
Thanks very much for inviting me today. My name is Lorraine Vassalo. With my husband, we own Avondale Sky Winery. It was a career change for us. I'd worked 30 years in the justice system, and I retired, and my husband sold his business and retired. And our original plan was just to have a nice little country lifestyle and have a vineyard. But it became very apparent that Nova Scotia needed another winery. So because Stuart and I have repurposed ourselves in a new career, we wanted the winery to be as sustainable as possible, so we repurpose as many things as we can. So our wine is made in an old barn that we rescued and had dismantled and moved about 6 kilometers. We got a little carried away with the retail space, though. That was a church that had been deconsecrated and was slated for destruction. So we moved that about 40 kilometers by water along the Minas Basin and up the Avon River on a barge, and trucked the rest of the way to our property. It's a magnificent building, and it truly was the right thing to do. Now, it wasn't easy, but it was the right thing to do. So we're one of the oldest vineyards in the province, but the newest grape winery. There is a couple of, there are a couple of newer fruit wineries, but we're still the newest grape winery in the province. And if any of you have been listening to the news over the last couple of days, the wine industry is a good news story. So we're really excited to be involved in wine in Nova Scotia at this time. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And Tasha.
Yes. Hi everyone, my name is Tasha Richard, and again, thank you so much for having me today to speak with you. Entrepreneurship really has been my passion for about the last 6 years. theoretically, but then since probably in the last 10 years, I own 3 companies. The first is called Platform Workspace. We just opened our first location about 15 months ago. Platform is flexible workspace for small and medium businesses, as well as mobile professionals. And we also have event space that we rent out to corporations looking to get off-site and have a retreat or to have their business meetings. Platform is more than just physical workspace, though. It's also a community of business owners and entrepreneurs that are really wanting to build exceptional businesses and recognize that it takes, much like it takes sometimes to raise children, it takes a community to raise a business. And that's what Platform really provides. I also own a national organization called Momcafe. Momcafe is really geared towards professional moms that want to stay in their corporate career, that want to connect with other professional moms that are either climbing the corporate ladder while having young children, or are looking at business entrepreneurship as an alternative once they have their small children. I've licensed that business. We run about 200 to 300 events across Canada per year, though a lot of that work is done by that local mom entrepreneur that is using Momcafe as her platform for her own entrepreneurial adventure. Out of Platform, I run my business consultancy. So when I mentioned that platform or that entrepreneurship really is my passion, I have the privilege and pleasure of working with predominantly women entrepreneurs in helping take their business from point A to point B in the most straightforward, efficient, and effective way possible. And I do that by meeting with them, doing strategic planning, and really acting as the CEO behind the scenes to make sure that they can have the strong business that they can. So, thank you.
Great. Thank you so much. And Stephanie.
Good afternoon. My name is Stephanie Coldwell. I'm pleased to have the opportunity to talk with you today. I have a management consulting practice called Coldwell Associates, and I work primarily in Nova Scotia, at least in the Maritimes. About half of my practice is working with small to mid-sized business, helping them develop growth strategies. What's true, I think, of most entrepreneurs is that they are experts in their own product or service and don't necessarily have a lot of knowledge or tools to provide all of the management supports that you need. And that's kind of my background in a whole variety of ways. And so I help people figure out what they need in order to stabilize their business, because usually you get somebody who knows absolutely everything, you hope, about their product or service, and they really care about it, and they may be really good at marketing or sales or HR, but they may not have some of the others. And if you want, so they're kind of like this. And if they want to grow, then they focus more on that knowledge base that they have, and they kind of go this way. And that's what happens if you don't get all of the other structures in place in order to develop into a stable business so that you can grow this way. So that's what I do, is I help folks to figure out what the tools are and supports that they need in order to stabilize their business and then to implement growth strategies. That would be about half of my practice. The rest of my practice would be not-for-profit and public sector, strategic planning, operational reviews, organizational reviews. All sounds boring. It's actually quite delightful. Mm-hmm. Pleased to be here. Thanks.
Great, thank you. And if you could all tell us what led you to starting your own business, whether it was an opportunity, a change you wanted to see, you wanted more independence, was there a need, an experience that you had, etc. So Lorraine, maybe if we could start with you.
Okay. As I mentioned earlier, I'd spent 30 years in the justice field, and I was retiring from there, and I just really needed a change. I needed something where I could basically be master of my own destiny. And I had this great little idea just to be a farmer. Well, that spun out of control rather quickly. But the farm was just, you know, taking care of the grapes, and it was great. But the first year, our then vineyard manager, who's a professionally trained winemaker, he and I kept back 1 ton of grapes from what we were selling to another winery. And we made 50 cases of wine, personal consumption, that year. And so when we tried the wine, we realized that it was silly to be selling our grapes at that price to another winery who was making the profit, because the risk is in the vineyard and the profit is in the winery. We haven't reached the profit in the winery part yet, but we know it's coming. So the winery is actually 3 different businesses. It's the farm is a full-time agricultural facility. The winery itself, where you make wine, is a full-time manufacturing operation, and then selling it as a full-time retail business. So it was truly a change of focus for us and a change of career. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Tasha?
Sure. And I think I'll jump in a little bit to my education background, if that's okay, too,
yeah,
because it really does lead into why I did start my own business. I had graduated from high school here, not too far away in Truro, and did my commerce degree at McGill. And I did it in business, when business wasn't really a popular thing to major in. In high school, as I'm sure you can well remember, that at least in my case, sciences were really pushed, and business skills weren't really, they were kind of seen for the people that couldn't do science. Which I think is unfortunate, but so I triple majored in marketing, HR, and entrepreneurship. I can tell you that the course I took in entrepreneurship in my undergrad, there were some things that I learned from that I think really serve me well today, but I don't necessarily think you have to have degrees in business to be successful as an entrepreneur, and I'm sure we'll get into that a little bit more in a bit. I then went on to do my MBA at McGill and partly here at St. Mary's, and again majored in entrepreneurship and strategic management. And I was really climbing the corporate ladder with, I left my MBA, started with Johnson & Johnson in brand management, and really thought my goal at that point was to be a VP of marketing of a major organization. The learning that I had there, I think, really set me up for future success in business. Having that corporate background and that experience and the training, particularly on someone else's dime, really helped me in what I'm doing today with Platform. But it was not enough for me at the time, I think. And so I ended up pregnant with I have 3 little children. And so I remember very clearly, I was in Los Angeles. Our head office for Neutrogena was in LA. I was there on business for 2 weeks and found out I was pregnant. And the world kind of came crashing down, because I thought, how could I have this amazing corporate career and also raise a very small family? And I know for a lot of you, you're probably not even thinking yet to families and kids, and you're deep in your studies right now, but it was a really defining moment when I look back. And so we relocated our family back to Nova Scotia, because, like I said, I couldn't get those 2 things to combine in my head, family, corporate career, and started working from home consulting for an agency in Toronto. And all 3 of my businesses come from a very authentic place, in the sense that I identified a need that I had, and I recognized in the marketplace there was a lack of services for that need. And so instead of, when I couldn't find something for myself, I ended up creating it. And so with Momcafe, I was working from home, feeling very isolated, had 3 small children, wanted to have stimulating business conversations with other women, not play dates. And it didn't exist, so we created Momcafe. And then as I started working, so it was probably year 4 or 5, and I started doing a lot more consulting, I looked around the city and I thought, geez, I don't want to have these meetings at Starbucks. The library isn't the greatest place to be building a business and meeting clients and pitching clients. And so the idea for Platform was born. So again, with the need of me wanting to have flexible space, not necessarily a replacement to a home office, but a conduit to a home office. And so then from the time that kind of started in my head, the idea for Platform, about 15 months later, we opened.
Great, thank you. Stephanie?
I'm a chartered accountant by training and spent a dozen years or so as the chief financial officer for a mid-sized company in Atlantic Canada. And I developed expertise in a broad range of areas. When I started with the company, they were small enough that those who were working on the service of the business were the majority of the employees. I was the only senior management person on site. So I ended up having to do a whole lot of things. As we grew, we added lots of different management areas, but I ended up with a grounding in a lot of different places. When I left there, I kind of thought that I would look for another executive position. It could be a chief operating officer, a chief executive officer. but people kept asking me to do project work. And so I would take on projects that were really interesting and exciting. And after a couple of years, I thought, okay, I have to stop doing the fun stuff and get a real job. And decided that I actually didn't want to do that. That was about 15 years ago. So that's how I ended up being a management consultant.
Great, thank you. Jeremy?
Actually, I'd just like to pick up on one of the points Tasha made, that great ability to see something that's needed and essentially carve out your own niche as a result of that observation. And I think there is that, I suppose, elegant balance between chance and, hopefully some kind of background knowledge. And they say that chance favors the prepared mind. And I suppose, to that point, that is what allowed, I think, our business to take form is that my own education, it actually, well, even before I started university, I started as a carpenter / painter. That's why you just really want to emphasize that point of innovation, because a lot of the greatest tools get made by those people that need tools in the end. And so it doesn't exist till they make it themselves. And so those are usually some really great ideas that change the way we build things. But anyway, that was I suppose my starting point pre-university. And then I did a 4-year degree, not knowing really what I was doing. It's just I went to university because you're supposed to go to university. Everybody tells you you're supposed to go to university. So I did, and ironically, the first job I had when I finished university was the last job I had before going into university. So not much direction, I suppose, but what it was I suppose, a true representation of what I wanted to do, which I think you can't ignore the utility of that, because that brings you to the unknown outcomes in a way. So to the students now, if you don't know where you are or where you're going, that's probably good. That would be boring if you knew the way anyway, right? But I went back to school because I had an affinity for research. I loved biology. I loved biochemistry and metabolism and physiology. So I did my PhD in biochemistry and molecular biology, and I did a postdoc at Cornell University after that. And of course, my partner was with me in Ithaca, New York, and it was really, if you followed the news in 2010, it was really a quite dire year. There were actually a number of suicides in Ithaca, New York. I mean, the weather there is bad, but there's also a lot of stress, right? So stress for students to maintain a GPA and maintain their scholarships. And everything's focused, on studying and work outcome. But this balance, to kind of take the stress off and bring perspective back seemed to be missing in, one of the best universities in the world. And this is really analogous, and you can extend this to, companies as well, right? We know, people on Wall Street being really stressed out and health. We know the associated health outcomes with economic decline there as well. So those are extreme cases. So there was the observation that, hey, you got to take care of yourself first, and nobody's going to argue that, before you can do, what it is, that you think defines, performance, whether that be your education outcome, A+, or, some kind of target bottom line. And so with the push coming from government as well for education and supporting, research findings. In a way, all of our marketing was done for us. We don't need to convince people. They know that health is important, and so it was a natural movement for us to go into this proactive health outcome-based business, especially where, we would bring the credibility of, having achieved results ourselves. And so, in a very short time, we've been incorporated in, 2010. We've had some pretty amazing results, but it has required, forward-thinking clients, right? So, we've had some phenomenal clients like Deloitte & Touche, for example, where we've had great outcomes working with them through their tax season, implementing a wellness program. Now, if picture an accountant, you were one, did you say you were an accountant, right, during tax season? It's not the most fun time, is it? So
I remember it.
Yeah. So we initiated a proactive plan for them over 6 weeks, and in that time they actually observed. We did these prospective surveys, which actually showed improvements in their their vision of what their life was. So in terms of their health, their community relationships, their satisfaction with their job, their satisfaction with their financial status. Nobody got a raise in that time. So all that was directly related to what we were able to do in terms of facilitating a healthful environment where it's also reinforced. And so why did you get into this? I mean, we liked it, and then there was support, and there seemed to be a need. And I mean, since that time, we've gotten some pretty important clients like McDonald's restaurants. So we're working with 10 McDonald's restaurants now in Halifax, and would you believe it that 75 people, McDonald's employees have signed up for the Blue Nose Marathon, which is a pretty big deal, right? And Halifax Port Authority, we facilitated a decrease in benefit claims by half in 1 year. So it was, okay, we thought this was needed, and then, in the short term, I think we established proof of principle, and we've been allowed to grow essentially by word of mouth. And so that's why we keep doing it, is because people keep telling us they need us.
Mm-hmm. Great. So largely based on personal need or need that you noticed in the community. Great. If you could speak directly to your education background or training that you have, and does it pertain directly to business and entrepreneurship? I know some of you have touched on that. Tasha, do you have anything to add?
Yeah,
We'll start
I think
with you.
with what I do on a day in, day out basis and running my business versus what I do with my business consultants. So, my business consultancy. So certainly my commerce degree and my MBA has served me very well, both in the hard and soft skills that I've learned from both of those degrees. When I work with clients across different sectors, it gives me a very good basis in being able to help them propel their own businesses. Do I think you need degrees to be an entrepreneur? No. There will be a time that you may find, so I always use the example of a massage therapist, and you really touched upon this a little bit as well. A massage therapist, a really passionate massage therapist, loves being in the treatment room, really making a difference in how that client feels, how their health is, and that is what he or she is really passionate about doing. Oftentimes, what they have a hard time with is the fact that if they want to have their own massage therapy business, there's a lot of other things that you need to do to run a business, and 95% of them are not going to involve you being directly involved with your client base. And so, as an entrepreneur, if you don't have a business background, those sorts of business skills are harder to learn. The good news is there's so many organizations, there's so many talented people that love to build businesses that can help you. So if you are someone that has a great idea and you don't have a business background, then you just find someone that can fill that in. So I think that's, yeah, it has absolutely served me well. I don't think it's critical to the success of someone being an entrepreneur.
Okay, great. Stephanie?
As I said, I'm a chartered accountant, which is where I sort of started with business, but I actually started with business before that. I spent a number of years working in different businesses, happened to end up in management by chance rather than by intention, and so came at my profession sort of the back way. My undergrad degree is in English and economics, and I've been through theater, engineering, physics, English, French, so took a kind of circuitous route. But I would say that all of the things that I've done have been tremendously educational to me in being able to do the work that I do. Because you don't know, because of the kind of thing that I do. And I am an entrepreneur, and I love business. And it doesn't matter what kind, because you've got maybe a dozen different areas that are important, that will be key success factors, and maybe half a dozen for any individual business. And then you add a bunch of people, and it totally messes everything up. And that's what's really fascinating, is managing to get all of the pieces and all of the people working in the same direction so that you get everybody feels successful about it. And that's kind of what makes me feel successful.
Great, thank you. Jeremy?
So I spoke already about my formal education, and this is one thing I always encourage students to remember. So I'm also a professor in the Applied Human Nutrition Department here at Mount St. Vincent University. So I do a fair bit of advising for students, and you know, a lot of them that are in that program, they're quite ambitious. And the way the calendar is laid out, you know, there's the nutrition program, then there's a nutrition program with dietetics, then there's a nutrition program with dietetics with internship, and those most, I suppose, ambitious and type A students automatically, I want that dietetics with internship because it's the hardest and most prestigious, because that's the way it's laid out in the calendar, and they don't really understand it necessarily at first. And so there is a tendency perhaps to think that the knowledge and the experience that you require, for business or life or whatever is somewhere else. But never undervalue the perspective and the lens that you can look through to bring yourself to whatever it is that you're doing. So I shouldn't maybe say this at the university, but don't put too much emphasis into your university education as being the defining thing for you, okay? So there's a lot more that you might learn from. And so a couple of examples that I could speak to here are, some of the most valuable lessons for me came from, my experience in athletics and, sport performance, and, learning how to overcome adversity in the most physical form, feeling it, right, and overcoming it nevertheless, and having those coaches impart knowledge on you that it just isn't in the classroom. And so never undervalue that. And then, of course, when you move into the business setting, don't be afraid to ask for help. The education doesn't stop just because you have, some alphabet soup after your name. The thing that people say, you go to school for 14 years. I mean, hopefully you never stop going to school, in terms of, like, life is always this great opportunity to learn. So I surround myself with, great business mentors. Hopefully, we'll speak after this, because it does take a community. I really like that quote, a community to run a business and to sustain a business. So, and to that point, education is always going to come for our business in particular, a social need as related to, health outcomes, right? So what is the public need, and prescribe, and how can we deliver that? So education never stops, and then, in fact, your best teachers and the people you should listen to most might be your clients that you're trying to provide a service or product to.
Great, thank you. Lorraine?
Is everyone here a business student? Or perhaps I should ask that differently. Is anyone here not a business student? Good choice. You'll notice a common theme here. The thing about a university education is the first people to get university educations were taught by people who did not have a university education. So, the first professors didn't have any degrees. It had to start somewhere. So learning is a lifelong process. As Jeremy just said so brilliantly, don't ever let that stop. And try really, really hard not to get tunnel vision. So my background, after doing an undergraduate degree at King's Endell, I went to the University of Ottawa and studied criminology. So I did a Master of Criminology there. And I came back and started working in my field of study. And after about 5 years, I realized there needed to be some substantial changes made. So you could be rebellious and be dismissed, or you could be part of the solution. So I went back to school and I did an MBA. And while doing my MBA, I could have focused on administration or marketing. Words come easy to me. Numbers are more difficult, so I thought, if I'm going to take all my social time, go back to school here, because I was going part-time, I wanted to learn something that was going to be a true challenge. So I got really interested in forensic accounting, and so I was going to mix together an MBA in finance with my criminology degree and become a forensic accountant and investigate insider trading. That was my plan, until the car ran the stop sign, and I got to live that day. But on that day, my life changed dramatically, and I was not going to be able to sit in a classroom or sit and do a chartered accountant designation. So I saw that as an opportunity to reinvent myself. So I did stay with Justice for the rest of my career, but when I stepped out of there, I tried something completely different. So the takeaway from this, if you take anything from listening to all of us, is please don't ever confuse the difference between an education and book learning. You have to put them together because they give you some credibility, but always have the integrity to follow your own passion and learn what you need to learn, but not just from books, from each other, from mentors, and the world in general.
Great, thank you. And kind of on the same note, do you have advice for those who are looking to start their own business, and who they should be involved with? Because I'm sure we have a range of, maybe first to fourth year students here. So community members, organizations, committees, or just other useful resources that you know of. Maybe Stephanie, if we could start with you.
Sure.
Great.
I think if you're starting a company, ideally, and everybody who starts a company doesn't have all the things they need. A few people, you hear the fabulous stories of somebody starting with $200 and they end up with multi-million-dollar companies and they do all sorts of wonderful things. For every single person in that position, there are hundreds of thousands who have started out the same way and not been successful. So I would give you some suggestions for things that would help you to be successful in starting a company. The first thing I think you need is a really good idea with some empirical data to support that. Doesn't mean that you need to go find a book with some numbers in it that support it, but you need to have some market research. So if you identify a need or something that you're really interested in, you need to make sure you understand what's already out there doing what you want to do. If you can find that there isn't somebody doing what you want to do, then maybe that's good. Or maybe it means nobody else is interested in it. So you need to find that out before you get going, before you spend a lot of time and money. You may want to do some primary market research, that is talking to people either formally or informally. I think you need to have lots of knowledge and passion about your product or service, because the reality is if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to start a company, some days it's going to take 150%. And almost no day will it take 20%. You need to work really hard and you need to be really disciplined. So you have to want to do it. You have to care enough about whatever the outcome is, your product or service, and its value and the way you perceive it, to push through the days that are really crappy, because you're going to have a bunch. I mean, we all have some anyway. But when you wear the 47 hats, because yes, there are 47 at least, if you're an entrepreneur, especially when you start out, and if you happen to have 3 businesses or decide that you want to actually move things around to start a business, maybe there are more than 47. I think you need a solid business model. You need to understand how you're going to produce your product, how you're going to distribute it, how you're going to get clients or customers, because that's really important. You may have something really wonderful. Just having it usually is not the way to get people to want it. They kind of have to know about it. I think you have to have enough money to fund the business, and as you grow, you need to really know how to figure that out. You need to know. You need to develop some sense of numbers. What are the numbers that are important for your business? What is it that others are going to need to know about your business? How do you know whether you're making money or not? I mean, you can do the 2 pockets. Whatever you sell, the money goes into one pocket, and you just pay money out of the other pocket, and at the end of the day, if you've got some left, then you own some. But that's not probably the best idea, especially not over time. You need good advisors, because there are things that you don't know about. if you can find some folks who do know about those things, gives you an opportunity to bounce ideas off people, because surprisingly enough, you won't know all the answers. And you won't know about all of the things that you need to know about in order to run a successful business. So finding some folks who do have, and then finding some professional advisors, I think is a good idea. And significant energy. You need to be able to actually focus on that kind of level of effort that you'll need. Because once you start to develop, you get to feel responsible for the people who work for you. You get to feel responsible for the people that you sell or your product to or provide your service to. You end up having to have broad shoulders some days. So it's really important that you care enough about what you're doing. It's not an easy street, but it's really rewarding.
Great, thank you. Jeremy?
Well, I don't know that I need to speak. That was quite comprehensive.
Good answer.
Maybe I'll just follow up on a few of Stephanie's points, because they were, hopefully you guys are taking notes, because I am. So one of those points, Stephanie, that you raised, market research, developing some kind of business plan. Obviously very key, but a number of things are going to pop up that you didn't account for. So do they still, I don't know, I didn't do a business review, do they do a 4-year plan? Like that's the number, a 4-year plan? Do they do that still? Yeah. Who has a 4-year plan? We got one person with a 4-year plan? You got one? Okay. Does anybody have any different kind of plan? The rest of you don't have no plan? Okay.
A plan for tomorrow night?
All right. Right. Anyway, so the 4-year plan, sure, it's great. What is the goal of the business? I mean, is it something that you were going to build and then sell to somebody else, or is it something that you're going to sustain and maintain and attach your life to? I mean, those are important things to know up front, I think. But to the point of this 4-year plan, in terms of, let's just speak according to growth here and business success, you can't stick to your plan if the market is telling you, or giving you new information that conflicts things that you had done in your initial study. So always, the education piece, it never stops. I think that's, been universally agreed upon at the table here this afternoon. What advice? Well, first of all, everything that I say is going to be a cliche. But I wouldn't say that just because it's cliche doesn't mean it has any value, because, I start to, recognize the value of cliches when I feel them, myself. Like, I don't know, sayings and cliches, like don't look a gift horse in the mouth. Like, yeah, I know what that means. But, until you've actually done it and made that mistake, you don't appreciate what that means. So, so there are all these things that you may think that you just take the time to feel and understand, certainly as you grow. But I think, it's funny because I have friends that say, oh, well, I'm just going to start a business. I'm just going to open a little cafe and I'll do what that Sushi Nami, I think it was, at the corner on Quimpool there. They gave out meal vouchers to fundraise for renovations, and then they honor those meal. But it's a really smart plan, actually, because the cash value that they get is more than what they're giving back in the end. But to the customer, it's the same. So it's really smart. But for people who've never gone into business, I'm just going to do that, and I'm just going to start up a little cafe. And yeah, I can get people in the community to do that. It's just not. It's possible, but it's like 150%, like you said, every day. And you have to be okay. I think with failing is who's here has gotten an F on their exam? Anybody? All right, you're proud of that F now because I said you got to be okay with failing, right? It means you have an opportunity to learn. So never think that that's a bad thing. But job security and benefits and, all these things which you can establish and apply for as, a small business owner. There are things like, for example, the Halifax Chamber of Commerce that, will give you, employee benefits that you can extend and retain employees, because you want those employees to stay with you that you take on initially and you put all that time and energy into to train. So you need to give them something. So there are resources like that initially, external funding that you can get. So we've got a few government grants, for example, through Career Focus. we make use of existing capital. So don't spend money on things that you can get for free or that people are going to donate to you. And I mean, I say that because initially making some mistakes and paying too much for things. And so there's, you know, you can't take anything for granted. You have to look at, you know, every aspect of your business. And I'll give an analogy. For example, I went to, you know, the bank today, and it's like, okay, well, you have this form of portfolio, and maybe we should set up this mutual fund aspect, and it's divided in this nice clean pie chart. And I'm like, okay, well, here's domestic, and here's international, and here's US, and here's European. I'm like, well, what are the companies that are contributing to this aspect of my portfolio? And the banker doesn't know. So as an entrepreneur, you need to ask those questions. I mean, firstly, well, actually before financial, from an ethical point of view, you don't want to be supporting companies that you don't, you know, you're not in line with ethically. But so to be always critical and inquisitive and meticulous in your learning. I mean, how many people in here would start a small business? Guys, is there? They're like maybe less now than there were before.
We'll get to the last question.
Yeah. So whose sole objective is money? You're lying, but just kidding. Yeah, right. But the thing is, if you come across, like, you need it to live, right? But in terms of securing your client base, I mean, that shouldn't be what comes through. It's them first, right? And that brings the success to your business. So, you know, money is great and it pays the bills, but that's not, I mean, at the end of the day, when you pack it in, not taking money with you, but, you know, hopefully, you know, you look back on what you did and you can feel good about it. But because there is a correlation, I think, between a successful business and you know, the genuine authenticity that you bring to provide good. I think that is important. I'm going to stop there, I think. Yeah.
Lorraine?
Well, when Stephanie mentioned 47 hats, all I could think of, that explains what happened to my hair.
There you go.
If you're considering the entrepreneurial route, ask yourself, do you want to be paid for every hour you work? Because if you do, it's not for you. And you work really, really hard up front for the potential of a payday down the road. God, I'm making it sound like a lottery here. Sorry about that. But it's kind of like growing a garden. You plant the seeds, you don't see anything happen, you water them, you hope for some sunshine, you water them again, you weed them, you fret, you try to keep the raccoons and the birds away, at least in the grape industry we do. Eventually, it's going to grow. So there's a payday down the road, and you'll reach the point where you'll get paid back for your work, and probably in multiples of what you would have made if you'd worked every hour, were paid for every hour. But if your goal is to get the money up front, it's probably not the proper route for you. The other thing you have to ask yourself is, are you passionate about it? Because if you're not following your passion, it's just going to be work. Mm-hmm. And you have to be passionate about what you do as an entrepreneur, because you spend so many hours doing it. If you don't love ladies' shoes, don't open a ladies' shoe shop. I always joke with our staff that if the winery goes under, at least I have a lifetime supply of drinking back there. You know, so I'm good.
And it's really good.
A business plan, in my mind, is essential. I'm kind of a spreadsheetaholic. I'm always playing with it. You'll learn about margin and earns and turns and all that kind of stuff. So we don't need to go into that now, but you need to have a map. You know, when you came to university, the first thing you looked at was the university calendar, and you found where you wanted to go and you saw what your options are. I see a business plan as the same thing. It's a guideline. It's not something that's concrete. So mine is fluid. I change it every 6 months, every year. I shouldn't say change it, but I update the numbers. Mm. And when you're looking to be an entrepreneur, asking questions is imperative. Find business or associations that are of a similar mind to what you have, and go in and ask questions. But you have to be honest. Don't go in and pretend you're doing a university paper, or you're just You're just, you know, just chatting. If you have every intention of opening a business 2 doors down, because while it takes a community to raise a business, the community can shut you down too. So integrity is king. If you can't rely on your own word, nobody else is going to be able to rely on your word either. And the other piece of advice that I'd like to offer is hire carefully, because firing people is really hard. It's hard emotionally. It's hard on them. It's hard on you. It's not something I take lightly, but it's something you have to do every once in a while. So hire carefully. Thanks.
Great.
So I'm lucky to be sitting on this panel because everything that the three of you have said has been so phenomenal, and I've taken some things away. I share in a lot of what you have offered, and have just been jotting down some notes, some quick hits on some things that might be unique. In the startup mode in particular, it can be very exhilarating and heartbreaking all at the same time. I don't think it's for the faint of heart, but I think it can be one of the most exciting times in anyone's career. Couple of quick little things. Ask for more money up front than you think you need. It is much easier to get money at the startup phase than it is when you're having issues with your business. And so if you're in year 3 and things are going really, really well, ask for a little bit more money, right? It seems kind of counterintuitive, but I can tell you based on our own experiences in our business and also some clients that I serve, when it's going tough from a cash flow perspective, and cash flow is king, it's harder for banks and other funding agencies to support you. So get more than you need up front, ask for it when you're in good shape. Be very tenacious. And so a lot of the things I think that makes a successful entrepreneur is less about their skill set and more about their character. And I can tell you that if I wasn't tenacious in some of the deals and meetings that I had, I probably wouldn't be sitting here in front of you. I can tell you that when I went for my first loan, it was with a local agency. So there's lots of, we haven't really talked about it, but there's lots of service agencies out there that'll help you. Lots of great loans. CYBF, if you're under 39, awesome startup loan. They're all character lenders for the most part. And so I remember sitting down with the gentleman that had been assigned to my account, and I was looking for $15,000. And by the way, money is not hard to find. That is a lot of people's perception, is it is hard to find money to start a business. I do not believe that's the case. I think if you have a really great plan and a really great passion, the money will be there for you. So he sat down with me, and he, I was telling him all the reasons why I wanted to have this money in my business plan. I had it all set. And he said, "Tasha, are you really sure you want to go into business? This sounds really scary to me." And I said, "Well, you're the one that's supposed to be inspiring me. You work for this agency that's giving away money for entrepreneurs." And so the reason I tell you this is because I think that there's a lot of funding agencies and support organizations in the city. They all have wonderful things to offer. It is very important for you to balance the information that they give you with people that are actually working and running their own business, right? So a lot of times you're going to be advised by people that may not have had the experience themselves and are desk workers. And so I just want you to use your best judgment in the information that they're giving them. 100%, they're worthy of your time. They have lots of to offer you. You just have to be able to balance and take away from that. If you are passionate, you need to have a singular focus on that passion. And you have to be able to inspire others. And a lot of that comes from self-confidence. So you can have a really great idea, but not really believe in yourself. And again, it comes back to what you need as a person to be an entrepreneur. You need to be able to communicate that clearly to other people. So I've seen people that have really awesome ideas, really bad at communicating. And so as you're looking in the next couple of years, as you're building your expertise in your own degrees, think about some of the softer skills. So public speaking, right? Being really good at decision making, because an entrepreneur, you have to make 1,000,001 decisions, and a lot of times they're split-second decisions. You don't have time to do all the research that you get to do when you're in a corporation. Corporations are really slow moving. You have all the time in the world, sometimes too much time to make decisions. When you're in a startup or you own your own business, it is split-second. Plan for the divorce before the marriage. This has been critical in my own partnerships. Partnerships are awesome when it comes to entrepreneurship. Plan your partnership well if you decide to go that route. It's great, particularly if you have young family like myself, because I have business partners. I can still go take vacation and know that there's someone that cares as much about that business as I do. And so I can go away for a couple of weeks and have someone that can fill in. We had to plan ahead of time, though, what that divorce looked like, and we had it in writing, right? Because in the beginning, everything's very rosy, and it's like, you know, everyone has their rose-colored glasses on, and it's happy, and you can never imagine that you would ever not want to be in business together. But I can guarantee you, at some point, it may happen. So having your exit strategy, as you mentioned, is really important. And business plans. So business plans are really fun to do. You know, a lot of people think, oh, they seem like so much work. There's a business plan you need for the bank, and then there's a business plan you need to build your business. The business plan for your bank could be 50 to 60 pages long. It is a good process to go through because it's going to bring up a lot of questions you may not have asked yourself about your business. The business plan that I do for clients that don't need funding is 1 page. It has a lot of information on that 1 page, but it is truly the roadmap that you need to grow your business. So know the difference between the two. So just to comment on something you said about money. Money absolutely can't be the driving force of your business, and I think more and more people are going to be looking for a social aspect to your business. But I'll also share that money does buy freedom. And what we've noticed in the last couple of years of being in our business, it is a privilege to be able to work in our business. There's been times since we've opened where my business partner and I have had to go take other gigs that we might otherwise have not have done, simply so we could keep feeding the business with the cash flow that it needed. So we could keep paying our employees, because once you hire someone, like you said, it's really hard to fire them. And then the last thing kind of on that note, someone told me a couple of years ago, to hire slowly and fire quickly. And it's probably been the best HR advice that I've ever been given.
Great, thank you. On campus here, we have a great resource, the Center for Women in Business. Yeah.
Yay!
Yes,
We have a
and they
representative over
actually
here.
connected me with the two lovely ladies on the end of our panel here today. So if you are a woman looking to be connected with other successful women, any students, okay, any students, they are an excellent resource. So you've all mentioned prior experiences. Do you believe it's important for an entrepreneur to work for another organization or another business to gain experience or knowledge prior to starting your own business? And why or why not? Jeremy, if we could start with you.
Didn't really prepare an answer for this one. You know, the interesting point, Lorraine, that you made was, you know, think about, you know, the first university professor, how he taught at university and he didn't have a university degree. And think about the person that designed, you know, the first car or motorcycle, or, you know, those people, I think, you know, the most important attribute that they might have had, you know, intrinsically or learned from a role model might be that ability to, you know, to innovate and recognize and again provide what that particular thing is you know, the particular demand that is apparent. So where you learn that, it could be certainly in, you know, in an industry similar to your own, but the kind of business that you're starting up. I mean, are you starting up something, you know, where you know, infrastructure exists currently, and so, you know, for example, if you look at, you know, Microsoft and Bing and versus Google, I mean, I think there might be some value to work at Microsoft or work at Google first and then steal all their ideas and bring them to Bing. But, I mean, you have to be really careful. So I think that it can really go either way, because the kind of work that I do now is work that I've been doing for, I mean, essentially my whole life, because I have been coaching and you know, educating myself, and so the things I've learned are relevant, you know, particularly relevant to what I'm doing. But I didn't physically go out and say, well, I have to get a job with a company that does, you know, corporate wellness. But, you know, having not having done that, there still is a lot that I can learn from people who are employed there currently, or people in the business. So there are different ways to go about it. So I mean, I would say, yes, it could serve as some value, but I don't think it has to be mandatory, especially if you have good mentors, good business partners. Because remember also, who you invite into your business should complement what it is that you're doing. So I can't do everything. I don't know everything, which is, it's great that your company exists, because now I can call you, and actually I saw the video before and I was like, oh, I have to call her. So I'm calling you soon. And so just because you don't know something, don't think you have to run out and learn it. Like, collaborate. I mean, like, things like that I've learned from research experience. So I've done diversity of research projects throughout my academic pursuit, where I'm not a specialist in 90% of the things I've done, but I can mobilize people to bring in and enhance my learning in that way, and then become a pseudo specialist, at least know where to go to get the answer. So it's kind of more those skills than this finite set of facts that you need and protocols that you need to accumulate. It's that willingness to learn and to recognize what's complementary to your business and what's not. So that's
Great,
something.
thanks. Lorraine?
I think it depends entirely on the individual. I had some skills that were highly transferable. I knew how to create and read a balance sheet. I could do accounting, I could do marketing, I could do HR things, just things that I had done in different ways, but I was able to bring them back to use them in my business. But I'd never worked in a winery before. So my personal view is I hire to my weaknesses. Some people hire to their strengths. They want to hire people who are like them, and I don't think that's going to get me anywhere. Yeah, I'll have someone to chat with, but that's about it. I want to hire people who are going to challenge me, who are going to make me look at things from a different perspective, and who are going to fill in for strengths that I don't have. So yeah, I just confess that I'd never worked in a winery before, and I own one. But I hired professional winemaking staff. I have spent, well, perfectly honest, I spent a great deal of time drinking. All my adult holidays, I'd gone to wine regions of the world, so I would cycle, I would hike. I didn't do the bus tour, that's not my style. But I did things that allowed me to stop and talk to vineyard workers in my very bad Italian or French, or my not so good New Zealand. But I traveled to any wine region that really interested me. I talked to winemakers, I talked to winery owners. So I had that sort of thing. And then, as I said, I hired people who knew what they were doing. I am the most obedient cellar rat any winemaker could ever want to have. Can I make wine if all's going well? Yeah, I can make a pretty good wine. If something happens, I don't know how to fix it. That's why we hire professionals. So it depends on the individual. But if your passion is to own, well, let's go back to that lady's shoe store again. It might not hurt you to work in a shoe store. So you don't just deal with trends. You actually know how to fit somebody, if that's how you need to do it. But I'm much more comfortable just winging it, challenging myself.
Great. Tasha?
I think if you know right to the tips of your toes right now what you really want to do, and it's a business and it's an idea and it's a passion, you don't have to go out and work for somebody else. You have the ability right now and the resources that you can have really at arm's length to be as successful as you want to be. If you're someone that you don't feel knows exactly what you want to do, then I think that going to work for someone else can give you a lot of experience. And I think what's important is that you start thinking now and have a plan on what that's going to look like. So when I finished my MBA, I knew I wanted to work corporately. I wanted to have that experience. And I treated the job as an experience. Someone else was paying me to learn from them. And then I went on to work at an agency side, and it was an agency size, and it was a mid-sized company. And the owner of that company was probably someone that I learned the most from, but mainly from the mistakes he made and the bad way that he treated his staff. So again, not a great experience day to day, but in retrospect, a huge learning experience. I worked for government, I worked for a nonprofit, every type of industry. I built a network marketing company. Each of those, instead of looking at it as, oh, this is a job, this is what I have to do to make money, to do whatever else I want to do, I always treat it as a way of learning and bringing me to my ultimate goal of having, my own successful enterprise. So I think the big thing is planning. I think also that the world that all of you are starting your professional journey in is breathtakingly fast, and it's so dramatically different from even I think about my dad. His goal in life was to work for the same company for 50 years. And he went to work in the morning, came home at night. He didn't look for job satisfaction. He was there to work hard and get a paycheck. And so I think for all of you, it's a much different world that we're building businesses in and that we're having careers. And so I think it's such a fun time to be in business, and I know that we've talked about kind of some of the downsides or the hard parts of being an entrepreneur, but I think we're going to get to some of the most exciting things. But I would encourage you now really just to plan what that looks like. So instead of accidentally falling into a job when you graduate 4th year because someone offers you one, may not serve you as well. So start planning now and really figure out what it is that you want to do.
Great. Thank you. Stephanie?
I don't think you have to work for an organization in order to be an entrepreneur, because I think being an entrepreneur has to do with how you want to direct your life rather than your job. But I think you get value from all of the ways in which you interact with people. One of the things that's true about having a business, about being an entrepreneur, is that you have to interact with other people. So you have to have learned some of those skills to be successful at it. You need to be able to talk to advisors, you need to be able to talk to customers, and you need to be able to deal with people who are not being reasonable. You need to know how to get something from someone who wasn't looking to give it to you in a way that you both feel good when you finish the conversation. So those are skills that you need. You need some of those people skills. You need to understand something about things like banks and funding organizations, about discipline. So it would seem to me that being an employee of an organization doesn't necessarily give you all those things. But if you grew up as an only child and have never been involved with organizations, volunteer organizations or social organizations or sports organizations, you tend not to interact with people too much. You tend to be very alone in the way in which you make decisions and do things and choose your path, and you've never worked for anybody. And I think of that and think, are there people like that? But I know there are. If you have all those things, then there are a lot of things against you to try and start a business, because you need to know something about people and about consumers, because you need to sell your product or service to somebody, unless you are independently wealthy and all you want to do is make whatever you make. So I think it's important to get some of those skills. You may need some training in whatever your product or service is. If you're going to manufacture something and you know nothing about manufacturing, you probably need to learn something about it, because you need to know something about the way in which your product or service is developed. It helps you to be authentic about what you're doing. It also helps you to know if somehow things are going off the rails. That's a useful thing to know. Not that you shouldn't trust people who work with you, but you need to take responsibility for what the outcomes are, because you're the one who's wearing that hat. So I would say that having experience is really important, but you could have started having experience from the age of 5 in whatever it is that's going to be helpful to you. So it really depends on what your need is. Can I go back just one sec to,
Certainly.
you had asked the question about, on your list anyway, about resources that you might use if you were looking to start a business, and I had a couple of thoughts that might be helpful to you. Chamber of Commerce, at least here, is really good. Most chambers of commerce are. There are regional development authorities in Nova Scotia. They're helpful. SEED is a useful organization to talk to. Canadian Federation of Independent Business. You know, there will be professional associations or industry associations. Do a little bit of research on it. Call those people, talk to them. You can be absolutely shameless about asking questions because most people who know something about it really want to be asked. And so they'll be really happy to talk to you, and you can absorb whatever they have to give you.
Great, thank you so much. And I know some of you have class at 3, so last but not least, if you could quickly tell us about challenges that you face and maybe preparedness for those challenges, but also at least one thing that it is that you absolutely love about being an entrepreneur. Maybe Lorraine, we'll start with you.
The biggest challenge we faced in our business turned out to be an amazing asset, because when we were rescuing the church and moving it by water, it didn't happen. Initially, it didn't happen when it was supposed to. The ferry operator had another contract and he hadn't told us about it, so we kept getting delayed, which really was to our advantage, because good news is a quick story, but bad news sells. So the press really picked up on another disappointment. Is it ever going to happen? So that building, aside from the fact that we saved that building for altruistic reasons, but that building it's the gift that keeps on giving. It has paid us back many, many times. That's not to say that we haven't had adversity in other areas, but I'm cognizant of the time here. And what I love most about what I do, it's a never-ending learning curve. Every day is a new adventure. Every day is different. Yesterday, we started off with 2 meetings in the morning. I spent the rest of the day writing the copy for the new news development on our website. This morning, I got up at 8:30. We had a meeting with the food and wine critic from the Globe and Mail. By 10 o'clock, I was bottling wine. I ran up to the house, jumped in the shower, changed my clothes, and drove in here to do this. I can assure you that my government desk job, it wasn't nearly that exciting. So, yes.
Tasha?
Yeah, I would say that it by far is the best thing I've ever done. I love, 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 love my businesses. And I can't imagine doing anything else. I would be the worst employee in the world now, I can tell you that. I love having the control over my time, having the diversity to my day, meeting fabulous people that have so much passion. And I think in terms of the challenges, you know, it's less about the challenges. I can guarantee you're going to have challenges. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to screw up. You're going to have heartbreaking times. It's how you handle them that makes a difference. So you kind of have to quickly pull yourself together. Don't dwell on them. Learn from them, but then move on. And I think, you know, if you're wondering if entrepreneurship's for you, I think really run a marathon, stay up all night, and see if you're still as passionate. And if you are, then you're cut out for it.
Great.
I have to run a marathon? I've never done that, and I don't want to start. In terms of hurdles, I would say I totally agree. It doesn't matter what the hurdles are, because you're going to come across them. I think you have to have honesty in the way that you approach the way you deal with it. If you've made a mistake, you need to say so and then get over yourself. I think you need adaptability. If you're planning to go this way and you hit a roadblock, you can either sit there and wait for the roadblock to move, or you find another way, because usually there's an outcome that you're looking for and you need to focus on that. So it's being adaptable, I think, is most important. And what do I love? I got to tell you, I get really excited about businesses and how passionate the people who have them are. I get really excited about igniting passion in people who started to get jaded about business. And I get really excited about clients who get it and all of a sudden they see the results of being disciplined in implementing strategy and finding that they are more successful, and it's like, holy mackerel, it works. That's exciting.
Great, thank you. Jeremy?
So I think that you should be prepared to roadblocks, right? So have hurdles and roadblocks, but you know, a lot of it, and your ability to rise above, I think has a lot to do. So I mean, to be clear, there have been many I'll call them challenges. Actually, even better language is opportunities that I've faced as a business owner. But that has been the key perspective for me, is to pursue them as opportunities. You know, opportunities to improve your business, opportunities to improve your knowledge, opportunities, you know, to just provide a better service. And I think that, you know, an important thing to remember, and actually this was communicated to me by local successful entrepreneur Mickey McDonald. He said, you know, it's not a friendship club. So if you like to have friends, I mean, have friends, but if you're the type of person, you know, that can't wear those different hats that we're talking about, then know that about yourself, because, you know, just keeping an employee on for a very long time because they're your friend may be detrimental to your business. And so that's, you know, morally and ethically maybe a difficult, you know, aspect to train into yourself, is remember, it's not a friendship club. As nice as I am, I can't just, you know, pay people for not doing work. And I mean, I think I'm going to finish with what I love about it. Have you guys seen the movie, like, Aviator? Have you guys seen Aviator? It's like that bio on, like, Howard Hughes kind of thing. I'm not saying I'm Howard Hughes, but it allows me to use that, like, obsession for, you know, growth and performance outcome. Like, it's a great avenue for that, where, okay, it's not a French club, you don't want to hurt people, but it also comes back to, like, my experience with competition as well. Like, I thrive in that kind of environment, and I will become stagnant in an environment that is the same every day. So you mentioned, I mean, well, if people want to work in government, I mean, please work in government, but a job that where and this isn't true of government, you don't do the same thing every day necessarily, so we work with government's good, okay? But the point is I suppose I like the unknown when I wake up in the morning. As scary as it is, it's kind of a thrill. So that might be what I like most about it. And to be clear, I mean, these jobs that offer apparent security, it's not true. I mean, there's no real job security, is there? Like, from what we've seen in the last, you know, 10 years. So what it allows me to do is put the onus on myself, and I feel better. Like, you know, when I'm on a plane, I would feel better if I was flying the plane. But actually, I know that's not the best thing. But you know what I mean? Like, some like, you say, oh, I'm just going to trust this person, fly, whatever. You know, okay, that wing thing doesn't look right, but oh, they know what they're doing. I like to be in control of, you know, what it is that I'm doing, and allow, you know, myself to, you know, to kind of come through this channel. I mean, it's a channel of the least resistance. It's yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you guys so much for being with us today. If everybody just wants to sit tight, and Miriam and Autumn will be around to stamp Learning Passport